down, power lines are down.
Message of 290 characters follows.
Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of Grid Down Comms Up on the Prepping Academy podcast. I am excited this evening to welcome a special guest, John Jacob Schmidt of the American Redoubt Radio Operators Network, or AmRRON. Tonight we've got a couple really cool topics to discuss. We're going to talk about his new release, the Partisan Operator Journals Volume 2, and the best and premier, at least in my opinion, radio exercise, the annual T-Rex or Tuitaka Readiness Exercise. But before we get into that, we've got a little bit of a PSA we want to bring to everybody. If you are a radio operator and you participate in the HF Persistent Presence nets, particularly of the morning on 40 meters, 7.110 megahertz, we have a little bit of an issue going on there that we want to raise awareness of and ask you guys if you can help us out. JJS, you want to fill us in on the details of that?
Hey, good evening, and thank you for having me on. It's been a long time, and it's just a pleasure to always talk to you. There is a nationwide CW traffic handling practice net that takes place in the mornings, and it has been going on for 20 years, I think, forever. And there is I'm trying to find it. I'm trying to find the time, but I know it's do you have the times of that net in front of you?
Not Zulu time. I think that it runs from 7 a.m. Eastern till around 9 a.m. Eastern, but I don't have the exact time in front of me at the moment.
Yep. I think you're right. I do too. And I have it here and I'm scrolling and I just can't find it. So I don't want to waste any more time, but it is, I believe I put 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern just to give them a buffer, because I think it goes till 9 or 9:30, whenever it is. That would give them plenty of room. There's no need for people to be beaconing and doing SNR requests and replies and everything else as often as is done anyway. So, but definitely, if you're going to go to work and be away from your station, but you want to leave it on all day, just leave your auto reply or click that TX button to turn off your transmit so you can gather anything that happened that you've captured throughout the day, but you're going to be sure not to be transmitting over something while you're unattended that's interfering with someone else. We see this also with our nets. While nets are taking place, we have people that are new sending out SNR requests, and that triggers a auto reply from every other station that forgot to turn their TX off during a net. Now, they might be disciplined and not transmitting because they know better, but they forgot to turn their auto reply off. And so you can have 8 or 9 people transmitting right on top of traffic that's being passed that's just obliterates it. So that comes from experience. So just gentle reminders periodically.
Absolutely. You know, we want to be the premier and best at what we do. We need to act like that sometimes, and in this case, be cognizant of that and try not to leave your auto stuff on, particularly in that time slot. So
be professional. That's just be professional.
Yes, absolutely. Kind of topic one for us tonight is a couple months ago you published a Partisan Operators Volume 2. After you released the first one, what was it, 2 years ago?
Oh, no, the first one was actually released in 2001, and then I think it hit Amazon in 2002. I'd have to go back and double check that. So numerous things obstructed me from finishing or continuing to work on Volume 2. That was supposed to be done within just, months. But, several years later, now we have Volume 2 finally released. But to break the pattern of waiting 4 years to publish the next book, Volume 3 is already being written. It is underway, and it is being released each week. And I'm actually writing ahead, so there won't be any delays when those are released in the encrypted form, anyway, on the internet. So, yeah, it's really exciting. It's been very well received, and it's picking up steam across the prepper, patriot, particularly the radio, people drawn toward communications, that crowd, and it's picking up. It's painting a picture of what we could use our communications equipment and skills in that falls outside your traditional ham radio hobby type of the operations. So yeah, it's catching on.
It's been exciting to read them. I finished the version or Partisan Operator Journals 2 about a month ago, I guess it was. I got it right after it was released. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Great story, great ride. Enjoyed the characters. It is such a cool story. And the two different storylines I so enjoyed. I don't want to give away too many spoilers during our podcasts.
Yeah.
I know you are working towards, on 3, which I've decoded those. We'll talk about that in a minute. I think that's kind of a cool project.
Yeah. Well, I think it would, maybe for those that are new to the Partisan Operator Journals, or maybe they're not quite sure what it entails. It's essentially another dystopian novel series. Like, we've read many of them, but there are several that I've really liked. Of course, I started off with James Rawls, the Patriots, and then the Going Home series, the 299 book series, and they're all great, but they kind of skim over communications. So the Partisan Operator Journals is a collapse type of an environment where we are not really ham radio operators, but civil defense radio operators. It's just a different environment. How do you take the skills that we use on a day-to-day basis as ham operators, or even unlicensed radio type of systems? How would you use that differently? What would that look like? So yeah, with book 1, I took the reader to what I call 0 day. That's what kicked everything off. So 0 day plus 1 year. So it kind of rushes the reader 1 year after this unknown event, this thing that happened, that you learn as you read. It kind of backfills, and you understand what's going on. And that is very HF digital mode kind of centric. It's really appeals to people that, besides an interesting story, if you're not into comms, but if you are, it would really appeal to those that are into HF radio, digital modes, and concerned about or interested in tradecraft and encryption and things like that. With book 2, I pulled it back to 0 day. So the day it began, this major nationwide event started. But this time I took a different approach, and the main character being a college-age girl that is a medic in the Army Reserves. And suddenly she's, 2,000 miles from home, from anybody and everybody. She does have a radio. Her dad really emphasized, this resonated with so many. I had so much feedback saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to make my daughter or my son read this. I have a 16-year-old, a 17-year-old, whatever, that it really drove home what, as your parents, the turmoil that parents have thinking about their kid being in this kind of a situation, being at college, 5 states away. And so they, especially us preparedness-minded, patriotic Americans, we want to try to train these skills up in our kids, but so often they don't take it seriously. So this girl is trying to recall all of this that her father taught her, and she's trying to use this radio and figure it out and remember it all. So yeah, she ends up meeting some very cool characters. including a ham radio operator who teaches her a lot. And so it's kind of a instructional. It takes you through what it might look like for somebody in that situation who's learning this stuff, that has equipment, but they don't have the skills. And you got somebody walking them and talking them through and demonstrating how this could be used in that kind of a situation. So now in book 3, it takes you to a completely different operating environment, a different part of the country. Now we're dealing with a group in Colorado, but they're a group of patriots that are part of the security detail in this small remote town. And so this is basically, they're going through 0 day plus the first, few weeks, just like the book 2 was, but they're in a different part of the country. So characters from books 1 and 2 make cameo appearances in subsequent books. So people and characters you get attached to, and they reappear. And so all of this is tying together how these different groups, different people in different parts of the country, they begin to network. I mean, they start touching each other, throughout the story, and it's going to get more interesting and exciting as it goes.
I'm very glad to hear that some of the characters make cameos, because there's a few characters in there I particularly like. The young man that I think it was in Idaho, that's in the,
Phil.
Yes, Phil.
Yes.
Kind of, I love the character and the dynamic and everything there, and the situation that's going on, not just with him, but the whole situation around there.
Yeah, that was kind of neat to hear people reading volume 2, where this girl and this ham operator, and they're in the Southeast in Alabama and Tennessee, and Phil makes an appearance, and so I'd read her saying, "Oh, Phil, cool, yeah," like, hey, I know him.
Yeah,
so yeah, and you'll see that in book 3 as well.
Cool. And the more backstory on that was so fun to read. It really is. It's an exciting book, and I encourage everybody, if you're into this survival dystopian fiction, check it out. If you're into radio stuff and you want to learn a little more about radio stuff with that too, there's some good tips and tricks and stuff that show up in there that maybe you haven't thought about. I mean, I in the end of the second book, and I don't want to give away too much of a spoiler here, but the FM radio station that the church is running, relaying information that they got off of HF radio, was just, and the circumstances surrounding that was just, that was cool.
Yeah, there's going to be more of that as well. Yeah, there's some very cool stuff in my mind. This is kind of like just doing a brain dump with all the stuff that's always been in my head, for years, which was kind of the vision for AmRRON, seeing a nationwide network of patriots and preppers, where there was, when AmRRON started in 2011, 2012, there was nothing. There was no, GMRS wasn't even a thing. It was authorized for use, but there was no real support for it. There wasn't repeaters. There was basically ham radio and FRS, CB, and MERS. And absolutely no standardized plan for like-minded patriot prepper type of people to link up and share intelligence and information and to inform others. And so, yeah, that's what kind of birthed it all. But there's so much more to tell. I mean, there's so many. I found that the fictional stories was the best way to demonstrate what it would actually look like, how important communications, how vital they are when there is no commercial infrastructure even available, how important that is. And the tools that are available to us and how we can use them, or even modify how we use them on a day-to-day basis in a situation where people are listening in that want to harm you, or people that don't want you to communicate and you still must. what do you do? So this kind of demonstrates that. And that's why, people have said, is this going to be a 3-book series or a 5-book? Or I'm like, I'm going to go until I've exhausted every different way to show and demonstrate in a creative and interesting way how important communications are and the tools that are available and how you can use them and even modify the way we normally use them to fit different scenarios.
That's cool. Yeah, there's so much outside of the box stuff that comes into communicating in a non-traditional environment. It's it's having the gear does not equal proficiency, and especially in that circumstance.
That's another aspect that I intended to develop in book 2, but I didn't get to the way I wanted to. So that will be developed in volume 3, where people who they don't want to get licensed, they don't want to get on the air, they don't want to be tracked, they don't want to be, RDF'd, but they got all the gear because, and they don't want the government telling them that they can or can't, what they can't do. So what they do is they want comms because they know it's important. So they buy it, all the stuff that somebody told them they should get, and they stuff it in a Faraday box until then there's an emergency and they get it out. Everybody who's experienced in communications knows full well they will not communicate if they don't train regularly. And including getting your ham license. Why? Because it's your training ground.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. And on the topic of training there, we've kind of mentioned that that we've received the pieces of this and the encrypted parts of this and that. So maybe we ought to tell our audience a little bit about the project that is going on, where that if you receive the AmRRON Intelligence Bulletin, which is sent out during NETs during the week, you can receive part of the password in that intelligence bulletin. And also in the net, there's a supplemental part of that. You take those 2 password pieces that you receive over the air, and then you can go to the AmRRON.com website, download the latest entry of the journal, and then decrypt it using those 2 passwords, because it encourages people to get on the air, it encourages people to practice. And
yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's how that's how the Partisan Operator Journals started. I didn't start off saying I'm going to write a fictional novel series on communications, that emphasizes communications. This actually started as a way to renew interest in participation on our practice nets. So yeah, I just started writing. It began with me just kind of making up a little scenario in my head and just writing a little, like a 1,000 word part, the beginning of some story that demonstrates communications. And, it's a grid down situation. There's a foreign military on our soil. This guy's overwatching an objective that he's been assigned to, and suddenly this foreign military shows up, which was not expected, and so he reports it. And so what I did is I thought, well, this is kind of a cool story. So what we did was encrypted it and posted it on the website, because you cannot send encrypted text over ham radio. So what you can do, though, is send the password over the radio, and you can only get it by participating in the nets. And so I would put it in the AmRRON intelligence brief at the bottom, so people knew to grab that and then go, and that was the password for decrypting that little piece of the story. And then they could read it, and then they couldn't wait to find out what happens next week, right? So then they tune into the nets next week, they get the AmRRON intelligence brief, they grab the Veracode, and they run and unlock the next journal entry. And so that created quite a bit of excitement. And then, of course, we added a supplemental Veracode, so it's 2 parts, where you have to get both of them, combine them, and that's the password to unlock, that week's journal entry. And they can learn more. the listeners can go to AmRRON.com and just do a search in the search box for Veracode. And there's a posting that talks exactly about what all it entails, where to get like the PTE encryption program that's free, download it, and then you use that to decrypt it each week. It explains everything in there. But once this kind of took on its own life and the Veracode project turned into Partisan Operator Journals, like this actually turning into a real story, then I thought, well, there's so many people that are interested in this. They've missed so many entries because they missed a net or people. I thought it would be a great way to direct people's attention to, off-grid, unconventional communications among people that are training for it now in a way that's legal and they're developing their skills, but how they could be a part of it. So, yeah, the Partisan Operator Journal book that went into print kind of became the advertisement for AmRRON or for just off-grid comms, just kind of to bring people's attention to it and direct them to where they can actually do this stuff that's in the book for real, besides the encryption. But yeah.
It's very cool. And I encourage everybody, if that's something you're interested in, you want to try it out. You don't even have to be a ham radio operator. You just have to have an HF receiver and free software. You can learn more about that on the AmRRON.com website or with us at PrepperNet. We use the FLDigi suite of tools as well. You can receive it. Even if you don't have a shortwave receiver, you can use a web SDR. That might be considered cheating by some people, but it works. And it's a way to get into this and get your toes wet and figure out, is this something I want to do?
Yeah, that's right.
So as we've talked about that, the other topic I really wanted to discuss tonight is coming up in about a month is the annual T-Rex exercise.
Yes. The acronym within an acronym. The T-Rex is the Teotwalkie Readiness Exercise, and Teotwalkie is a term that James Rawls from Survival Blog coined when he wrote his book, The Patriots, in the 90s. And it's the end of the world as we know it. Or you can call it SHTF or the zombie apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. It's basically when the system collapses and it's permanent. It's not a hurricane that we're going to be over in a few weeks or months. It's not tornadoes. This is something catastrophic that changes our culture, our country, the landscape, the political landscape, the human landscape. That's Teotwalkie. In his mind's eye, and that's what he wrote articles about, and that's what he included in his book. So I kind of took it from that. But the T-Rex exercise actually started in 2012 when we kind of shifted from just the CH3 project to becoming AmRRON. That's when AmRRON was born. So this is the 13th annual, and if you're doing math, we did not do it the year of COVID. So this would be the 14th annual, but otherwise, this is the 13th annual Teotwalkie Readiness Exercise, where every person, and this is not this is put on by AmRRON. It's provided by AmRRON, facilitated, planned, everything else. But this is really for the whole Patriot Prepper community who have very rare opportunities to set a time aside to actually put your preparations to the test and go off grid, cut your internet, turn off your cell phone or your data, and communicate only using unconventional methods. The emphasis is on communications, but we have families, individuals, groups that are they're following along with the scenario. They're going to kill the switch on their power, their internet, and they're going to put all of their preps to the test and see how well their generator leaks. Or, it really exposes so much, and including things in your communications like, well, I got this deep cycle battery and I'm going to run that all weekend. Well, then you realize it lasted me a half a day. So you would not know that going into a real world event if you didn't put yourself in a simulated grid down situation and really stress your system that you think you're counting on until you do stress it. And you realize, well, okay, I ran out of power like on the third day. Okay. So this is a 3-day exercise. So no problem. But you know what? If this was any longer than that, I need to buy another solar panel. I'm going to get another 100 watt and so it, like I said, it exposes those things, whether it's communications or, backup power or your cooking or how many briquettes did you go through, cooking with your Dutch oven, or how much propane did you go through? And and there are also groups, mutual aid groups or church disaster groups, community groups, militias, whatever, that are doing the same thing. But they're also they're incorporating other training, like they're putting on a medical class Saturday morning, and they're putting on land navigation, that afternoon. But in the meantime, the radio operators are rotating, shifts, getting information that's coming from the AmRRON nets, what happened next, and where are the riots, or this plane that crashed, or, this mob that's looting and pillaging, going from point to point, and it just happens to be down the road from you. What would you do if this were real and that news headline just came? You just received that over radio. Who would you inform? How would you inform them? And then you start realizing, well, if this was real, I definitely want to let so-and-so know in this town down the road, but we don't have comms with them. So after this exercise, we're going to fix that. We're going to get on the same page and make sure we can communicate with each other. So that's what it's for. And for our operators that are seasoned and experienced, we learn something every year. It exposes something every year, or bad coax cables or things you didn't know about that, or you just get better. Even if everything goes off without a hitch and everything works as planned, you just get better. You gain more experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's one of the PrepperNet groups is planning to bug out during T-Rex and set up field stations and camp and do all kinds of stuff as a kind of a training exercise. So yeah, lots of folks doing those sorts of things. T-Rex is always exciting. I always learn something. One year I had my Raspberry Pi die halfway through and I had to go to a backup image. And
yes,
it's there's always something. It's very proof that Murphy is always around.
Every time. And
2 is 1 and 1 is none, because it will come and get you, absolutely, without a doubt. Go ahead.
I was going to say, for the negative Nancys or for the doubters or for the whatever you want to call them, somebody always tries to, nitpick. Well, I wouldn't go out in a group. If this was real, I wouldn't be like running out and camping with a bunch of people. I'd be staying here. This is where my stuff's at. That's not the point. The point is, first of all, it builds camaraderie, and you really get to know people on a different level. You do get to bounce stuff off of each other and train with each other, and also the reality is, most operators, they're not going to be sitting there at their radio, 3 days straight, like they do with T-Rex. We understand that. But, and often we run into this every year where people argue that, well, I've got chickens to take care of. I'll be doing gardening. I'd be doing, security patrols. I wouldn't be in front of the radio. That's all true. But the emphasis is on a communications training exercise. It's a rare opportunity to train and pour all in and focus on your communications and be on every net and be monitoring and be tracking and putting your intelligence reports together on what you are receiving, because it is a communications training exercise. You're not training if you're simulating that you wouldn't be at your radio. So you're off doing other stuff since you wouldn't be doing radio the whole time in a real world situation. So you're going to intentionally not do radio, to incorporate that into the realisticness about how much time you're going to spend on the radio. Look, spend the time knowing full well you would not be in front of the radio this much, 16 hours a day, every day, in a real world situation. But if you're not focused on communications during this, then you're missing valuable experience that you will need, that will help you when this is real. And then you won't be in front of the radio 16 hours a day in a real world situation. But for training, spend some time on it. Don't just check into one net and then call it a weekend.
I might also go so far as to say during the first, 24 to 48 hours of some events, someone in your group spending 24 hours a day by the radio may actually be the reality, trying to find out what happened and what is going on. Because, Forrest and I did a podcast on this the other day talking about some of Selco's stuff and how that, gardening, everybody's like, oh, I'm going to be out gardening and doing this, that, or the other. And it's like during the first year, you may just want to be hunkered down and as low profile as you can possibly be and just doing security. And, we had a conversation about that because, we get that whole thing all the time, like you were saying, of people going,
right. Well, especially at the onset. And here's a real world example. When Hurricane Helene hit, there was a ham radio club that was live streaming their repeater traffic. They had one main NCS and a couple alternatives that rotated in, but they were animals. I mean, they were like 36 hours running non-stop traffic, and a lot of it was welfare traffic. And they were trying to find the status on loved ones in these remote villages that they haven't heard from. And I'll tell you what, the radio traffic, it was like, feed the cat, feed the dog, what cat, what dog? There's, radio. It was like everything was about comms. And you know what? Every radio operator in the area, including those on the internet that were listening to the live streaming, were pinned to it for the first several days at the beginning of this. So you will be, when there is no news, you cut off all your news. Well, things are going on with Iran right now, and don't get any news at all. You're going to be chomping at the bit to find out what's going on, what's the latest. So, especially at the beginning. Now, once you start, things do calm down. After the first few days, you're like, oh, okay, well, I got a grip on this. All right, now I better go feed the chickens, or now I'm going to go, do whatever it is. But if you're dedicated as a communicator for your group or your family, it is going to dominate the first part of a real world event because information is key to survival. And plus, psychologically, it becomes more craved than food in a real world grid down situation. People are starving for information. They want to know.
Oh yeah, you hear stories about relief aid workers in Africa and war-torn countries bringing in trucks loads of food and relief supplies, and they get asked by everybody that comes up, hey, what's going on? When is this? That's always a huge part of that is the blackout of information is just such a huge, massive thing. And yeah, the Hurricane Helene thing is so true. I think my wife was very frustrated with me that weekend because I had friends in North Carolina I was trying to reach, and I had 3 or 4 sources of information on and almost didn't sleep for the first 3 days.
Yep.
I practically slept in the ham shack.
And you didn't even think about the garden once.
Nope. Didn't think about the garden once.
Exactly.
Was thinking about how I could get to people I knew that needed help.
Absolutely.
That is true. So is there anything you can tell us about T-Rex this year? Are the Maoistanis returning? Any hints on the scenario?
I think you're going to see Maoistanis returning. Now, of course, we don't give away the scenario until the event. We've had several people ask, what's the scenario? But what we do is we put out this news deck the week of, actually about a week out. So that Friday before the event, which by the way is July 24th, 25th, and 26th, starting Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. That's when you kill the switch. So it simulates what would happen if all of a sudden the grid went down and you picked up your cell phone and there's no signal and you can't reach anyone. And so you jump on the internet and there's like no internet. Now you got this big fat question mark hanging over your head, right? So how do you get information? You assess your own situation first. You prepare a report by filling out a stat rep, because this is the phones and the internet and the power don't always ever go out all at once. So something's up. So you want to put the word out, and then of course then you start to get other people reporting in other states their power's out, their internet's out, they have no phone service. So then you begin understanding the size, the scope, the impact of this event and what all is entailed, but you still don't know exactly the details about what and why and what is it affecting? How is it affecting society? What threats begin emerging that you would not otherwise know about without communications? What trends are beginning to develop that you definitely want to have situational awareness of? So leading up a week out, we'll begin posting these on what is it? It's TWN News. It's the T-Rex Fake News Network. TFN. I have to look again. But anyway,
yeah.
We begin feeding the scenario as news stories. This just happened. Maoistan ships were just spotted off the coast of Alaska. What are they up to? And, so all these little breadcrumbs start falling. And if you're paying attention to the news leading up to the event, at least you have some idea that there was in the news cycle something in your brain you should be putting together that is very likely related. This could be related to what we saw in the news this week. So then we have up to 24 stations with preloaded traffic that are issued this traffic to send over the radio at pre-designated times and days throughout the scenario, throughout the weekend. So what this does is it enhances the storyline of the scenario. It keeps the timeline going, and it provides a realistic escalation or deterioration, however you want to look at it, of these events, and you start to understand the things that have been impacted, possible causes or methods. You understand that this is an attack. This was intentional. And you start to learn who, what, why, where, and when as you get on the radio and you start gathering news. And then the signals centers, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and then AmRRON National, compile these aggregated reports from all the news that's coming in and put those out as daily executive summary, news briefs, because there's no Fox News, there's no Patriot News Network, all of this is like gone now. We're it's, the citizens now are reporting everything that they're learning over radio. And then of course this triggers welfare traffic. So somebody may have an assignment, if you hear of a dam breaking in such and such a town. If you receive that kind of a report over the air, you have a brother and his family are living there and you're concerned and you want to check on them. So what they would do, that would trigger a welfare check that they would put together, send over the air to check on, Bob Smith on 123 Elm Street in such and such Nevada, can you please check on them? And then other stations would reply, your message was delivered, hopefully. So this is a test. Is traffic going to get to where it's supposed to? Are acknowledgements going to make it back to the originating station? Are NCSs able to handle traffic fluidly and hand people off to other frequencies and coordinate the movement of traffic, especially when it starts to get intense and people are starting to chase news? And see, the one thing about, let's use the One America News Network, it's a one-way conversation. They get to spit it out and say, this is what happened today. Have a nice evening. Well, with being on the radio, you're spitting out the news, but then you're also bombarded with people wanting to know more. And, can you repeat this? And can you repeat that? And I didn't get all of that. Can you tell me again? And I have this piece of traffic to get from point A to point B, and could you relay it for me? So it gets to be pretty chaotic. So this is we train and practice all week. All year. This is like the exam. So, yeah, so we get to put it all together.
It's the Super Bowl of radio preparedness or something like that. All right.
Yeah.
So very cool. One of the great exercises. I don't think there's anybody else that does an exercise of this scale. I know of a few statewide exercises, things like that, but as far as a national exercise, there is no other exercise that comes, frankly, even close. And a couple years ago, I remember some piece of exercise flash traffic that initiated on the East Coast and made it all the way to, I think it was you, on the West Coast in less than 15 minutes.
I believe it.
Just incredible examples of how quickly information can move over radio without using any infrastructure.
Yes.
Total encouragement to those, that are out there looking at communications and going, a lot of these things you can't do by yourself, but if you start building a team now, that's the beauty of AmRRON. That's the beauty
absolutely
of PrepperNet. That's, the beauty of building those connections and relationships now and training together with people. You know who to reach out to or who may be able to help or who may be able to have information.
Absolutely.
Those sorts of things. It is such a critical aspect of this.
Well, it does, and it takes time to build that. So, when should I start? Yesterday. Start now. And look, we've been doing this since 2012. Don't think, it's too late now. I've, come in late to the party. And no, start now, because people thought when Russia invaded Ukraine, here we go, World War III, and now it's been 5 years. But people that started 5 years ago are now 5-year experienced radio operators who now, just like me or anyone else has been in this from the beginning. If I have to get a piece of traffic from here to Florida, I can immediately think of 5 people I know could get traffic to another 5 people that I know in that region. Because over time you've built up the network and operators that you begin building a rapport with, and you start understanding, this guy's got a good station. I could get this to him. I know he can reach Virginia because I've seen the discussions on our AmRRON channels and stuff. So that, this takes time. Start now.
Absolutely. And, we've used that. A lot of us still use that when traveling, or we have family members or that kind of thing that maybe aren't radio operators. But if something happens, we build those networks, go, hey, if something happens, can I send you a message via radio, and can you get it to, my father or my daughter or whatever that's in the same town as you? And, or maybe they're a technician and they don't have HF capabilities, but maybe you could get it to them over 2-meter radio, or,
absolutely
those sorts of things. Build those networks. The more people you have in your network, the better.
Yes.
And,
interesting too, talking about the size and the scale of this type of an exercise and nobody else doing it. the only other entities that I've seen do a scenario-based exercise like this are at the government level. And this was really reinforced during the Cascadia Rising exercise for the Cascadia subduction zone, big 9.0 earthquake that all the scientists are predicting along the Pacific Northwest off the coast, and how devastating that will be. So they did a big exercise, which included the military, the National Guard, state level, county EOCs, even all the way down to Northern California and British Columbia, all of these entities working together. And so I was reaching out to several of our AmRRON members who are involved in ARES or the local ham clubs in the county. Even those who worked at the EOC at the county were benched. They were basically told, citizens, if we need you, we'll let you know. But otherwise, this was a government communications exercise. And of course, briefings that came out from some legislators that I know said that in their briefing, they said they identified the number one failure point in their ability to respond to this type of an earthquake is communications. Communications was an abysmal failure, and they're not using ham radio operators or the citizenry. It's because it's turned into continuity of government instead of civil defense. So now there are some, the CERT programs, and, they're trying to revive that, but they cannot handle communications on this scale at the CERT level. They're digging through rubble trying to identify bodies with FRS radios. We've got to train, and there's the government's training, and we're not for these type of major disasters.
Well, and kind of on the government training side of this and just the individual scale of this is kind of adjacent to T-Rex, because I know we've talked about this related to T-Rex on some side channels and other things. But when it comes to disasters, when it comes to emergencies, when it comes to a lot of government communications, there's a ton of discussion on Starlink, because Starlink, it's going to replace HF radio. You don't need a license. It's faster. It's better. Yeah, but it's not. It's
right.
But what are your thoughts on that as far as what you've seen? I mean, I've seen it work great in a disaster, but I've also seen some issues, and I know there are emerging threats in a man-made disaster, shall we say, situation that may impact Starlink. So it's not time to sell your HF radio just yet.
Well, we could ask the Iranians, the Iranian people, how well completely depending on Starlink only worked out for them. Starlink is a beautiful thing, and I have Starlink, and I have a Starlink Mini. That's part of my deploy kit. That's my link to the outside world from a remote mountainous area. However, where I live, there's some steep, deep, mountainous, rugged regimes where you are kind of pinned between a river and the mountainside and a straight up mountain almost. There's no pointing it to the north to get to a satellite. You're being blocked. They're very reliable systems, and I rely on them, but I also have a backup. HF communications can't be beat. We need to be self-reliant and have communications that rely on no other infrastructure or entity. Right now, Musk is, he's a good guy, right? But I don't know, the way I'm seeing things shift in the world and leaders in the world shifting, their attitudes could change real quick. And a time is coming, and I expect this, from a Christian perspective, reading the Bible, there's coming a time when Christians are going to be hated and hunted. And using Starlink is probably going to be, I don't want him communicating. Flip the switch on that. Yeah, let's shut them off. We don't know, not to mention China and Russia are developing weapons systems specifically designed to target Starlink because they see them as a national security threat, because we use that as part of our command and control. So eventually, if you rely only on Starlink, you're setting yourself to be shocked one day when you realize that it's not there and it was always supposed to be there and now it's not. And that was my plan. That was my plan A. And you don't have a plan B or a plan C, or someone chooses that they don't want you to communicate. If they're in charge of the system, you don't get to, if you're in charge of your radio and your buddy is in charge of his, there is no infrastructure to fail between you or to approve of your talking to each other or taking it out because your government's also using it. And so with HF, you have so much more lateral movement and freedom and independence to be able to communicate. For over the horizon, beyond line of sight communications, you've got to put HF at the highest level of priorities on your communications list.
Absolutely. As Starlink is just another tool in our collection of options, and
right.
It doesn't replace everything else. Well, is there anything else you want to add to our discussion tonight? Anything you need that you're working on, you want to share? AmRRON University, anything like that before we wrap this one up?
Boy, we are working on so many things right now, and I'm trying to get the most timely information out on the AmRRON YouTube channel. So if folks would go to YouTube or Rumble and look up AmRRON and subscribe, then you're going to stay up on the latest things that we're covering. Like right now, Mesh Core is taking off like a wildfire. And so I began introducing Mesh Core it's the most simplistic method of being able to communicate for most people because all it requires is a cell phone with no cell phone service, no internet, but it is community supported with these nodes that are being put up everywhere. And it allows you to send texts and it creates a mesh, a relay mesh. Literally, I've been sending texts 20, 40, 60 miles, not direct, but going through these mesh repeater nodes that are rapidly being put up all across the country in communities. And where I live, it's a continuous discussion about, we're going to start talking about, incorporating Mesh Core into our communications plan. We just had wildfires come through. We had some serious storms come through 2 weeks ago. There was a lot of information the citizens were sharing that you could get on the internet as well. But if the internet goes down and cell phones go down, these continue. They're self-contained, battery-operated, solar-powered, and you connect to your personal node through Bluetooth on your phone, and you're texting people all around your community in your region. And so that's one thing. Another thing I'll be announcing this Friday, a new project that we are developing that ties in the BTEC UV Pro and Mesh Core and all of that into a very powerful tool. So there's a lot going on, and mostly YouTube is the main outlet to get that out to the most amount of people in the most timely way, with step-by-step instructions on how to get set up and incorporate this into your own comms plan yourself.
Excellent. Yeah, you have inspired me to look back at Mesh Core. Meshtastic did not turn out well in a lot of ways, and I kind of gave up on that after particularly Hurricane Helene. And now it's looking like Mesh Core may have solved some of those problems. So I need to give that a second try again. Well, as always, it was excellent to have you on the show. I appreciate you spending an hour with us here to talk about what's going on in
My
the
pleasure.
AmRRON and T-Rex world. And, of course, you are always welcome back. Anytime you want to join us on the Prepping Academy here, we would love to have you.
Sure, appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Great talking to you. God bless.
Great talking to you, 7-3, and we will catch you soon. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Prepping Academy podcast. If you'd like to learn more or hear more from me, you can check me out at Grid Down Comms Up on YouTube. You can also find JJS at AmRRON.com and RadioFreeRedoubt.com for his podcast, as well as the AmRRON Academy on YouTube. If you're interested in the Partisan Operators Journals, you can find those on Amazon and on his website. This is Grid Down Comms Up for the Prepping Academy.